I'm Nurse Jessica Seitz, along with Nurse Erica. We're Nurses Uncorked, the podcast that takes nursing facts with nursing comedy and makes a little cocktail out of it. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Nurses Uncorked. I'm really glad that we're having an episode this week because I wasn't sure it was going to happen.
We almost didn't.
Yeah, but here we are recording it last minute because we're on a streak, I guess, Nurse Erica and myself. And knock on something, we haven't missed one yet. So here we are again. But we're glad to be back. If it's your first time joining us, thank you for joining Nurses Uncorked. If you like us, give us a follow and a like, and maybe give us 5 stars. Download the episodes. If you don't like us, just act like you never heard it. All right. Nurse Erica is going to get into the topic this week, which is very interesting, but she'll do that in just a minute. Before that, we're going to uncork ourselves and relax a little bit and get into the beverage of the week. I have no idea what Erica's doing.
I am so excited for this cocktail of the week, and I can't believe that I haven't done this one before because it's one of my all-time favorite drinks. And I think I just kind of forgot about it because I haven't had one in a long time. But we are having a white Russian. Have you ever had a white Russian?
Big Lebowski. Did you ever see the movie Big Lebowski?
The dude abides.
Yeah. Yeah, he loves his white Russians.
Yeah,
My husband became a fan of white Russians because of that movie.
My ex-fiance loved that movie. And so he got me hooked on white Russians, and I have loved them ever since. Yeah. So it's a very rich drink. It does have half and half or heavy cream in it, depending on how you want to do it. But it is delicious. Okay. So
hey, I know you and you know me. We like our heavy whipping cream, right?
That's true.
So
in the
freaking
coffee.
Good. Yes. Love it.
Okay, I've got my tumbler with some ice here. Okay. It only has 3 ingredients. It's actually really easy to make. And the first one is vodka. So you're going to do about, I just kind of eyeball it, but I'm trying to be better about measurements for people. But it says 1 2/3 ounces. So I'm measuring in the vodka.
I'm going to write that down. That's another upcoming merch for us. I'm just going to eyeball it. Literally every time that's what we say.
Okay.
Or what did Massel say? Add season to taste or whatever. Whatever his family says. Yeah.
So I've got the half and half, or you can do heavy cream if you really are feeling decadent. So you need about 1 ounce. Hold on. This is gonna.
There she goes with the thesaurus again. If you're feeling really decadent this week.
Oh my gosh, she's always making fun of my vast and impressive vocabulary.
Yeah. Every week she's got to pull something out. If you're feeling decadent, pull out your heavy whipping cream.
Listen, my kids, their whole life, the ongoing joke is when I use a word, I'm like, and they look at me crazy like you do. I'm like, it's going to be on your SATs. I still say this to them. They're out of college, but I'm still like, it's going to be SAT.
Probably will be.
The third and final ingredient is Kahlua, coffee liqueur. Okay, so I actually opted for the salted caramel coffee liqueur Kahlua because I just thought it sounded really good.
Or is it liqueur? Is it liqueur?
I don't know. We should do.
I don't think it's curing anything, Erica. I don't think it's a liqueur.
I think it's a liqueur. Know. It could be a liqueur. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I think
somebody
I've always
write us and let us know how do you pronounce it? Because we don't know. I don't really know either. Okay. But it's Kahlua anyways.
I'm pouring that in. And then some people choose not to mix it. They like the way it just kind of like lays on top. But I'm going to mix mine. And I know you're jealous. I know you wish you had one of these in front of you. Because these are...
It does look good. I'm not going to lie.
This is good.
Delish.
Yay.
Yeah,
one of my all-time favorites. Honestly.
Cheers. Yeah. I'm having my usual.
What are you drinking out of? Your 60 milligrams of?
Fuckatol. I'm not drinking Fuckatol. That's the tumbler. I am drinking my Chardonnay. My Bio
out of a
Ranch
sippy
Chardonnay.
cup. Is that your merch? Is that your new merch?
Yes. Yes. On Nurse Jessica's site, shop.com. Not that I'm
I didn't even know that. I was
plugging
just guessing.
It is.
60 milligrams of fuckatol. That's cute. That's cute.
Yeah, and it says
Okay.
unlimited refills. I mean, I like this doctor. Anywho.
Well, cheers. Cheers, White Russian.
Cheers. Cheers. It's just you
seriously
and
good.
me this week, Erica. Just you and me.
I know. Well, here's the thing. We didn't really know what we were going to do for this week. We had tossed around a couple of ideas, and then we decided on something else entirely.
Actually,
and
that's
then,
not what happened. She's lying. What happened was every idea that I said, she went, I don't know. I'm not sure. So basically what happened was I waited for Erica to make a decision, and then she notified me. And that's where we're at.
It sounds so bad.
I know.
So we had decided to talk
easy.
about a recent case against a psych nurse, or maybe I decided that in my head and didn't inform you. I don't know, but I thought that's what we were going to talk about until I was sent this video on TikTok last night, and then this morning.
Do you want to know what's funny? Is that I didn't send it to you because I assumed you already had seen it. Like, I knew if I sent it to you that you were going to be like, everybody's seen it. So I haven't
checked my mentions, where you can tag people and stuff in a while. So I probably have been tagged in it in a bunch and didn't know. But I just got it last night and then saw the follow-up video this morning, and I immediately sent it to you because it has to do with labor and delivery. And for those of you that don't know, Jessica has like 20 plus years of experience in L&D. And I sent her this. Yeah. And I'm like, have you seen this shit?
And I graduated nursing school when I was 20. I mean, I'm 14.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Me too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm like Doogie Howser. Oh God, that dates me right there. If anybody knows who Doogie Howser was.
I love
Never
him.
mind. Boy, I'm full of it today, and I'm not even tipsy.
It's the Chardonnay.
These are my first few sips. I don't know. Maybe it's because it's just you and me. It's just like,
it's laid back. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I sent you the video, and all you said was, "Yeah, I've seen it," and we have not talked.
I've seen it
until now. Like, we have not prepped for this or anything, because we got on first before we started recording, and I said, don't tell me how you feel about it. I want to know. I want to find out on the podcast, because it's unlike Jessica to just say, yeah, I've seen it, with not an opinion attached. So I'm like, does she feel opposite of me? I'm going to be shocked if you do, but it's okay. Let's get
I guess we'll find out, won't we?
But I was so heated by this that I'm like,
I have a lot of opinions about it.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna get into it. Let's tell the story.
Yeah. So you may have seen this if you are on Nurse TikTok, because it is blowing up everywhere. But there is a woman. She's African American, and she posted a clip from a podcast in which she says that when she was in the hospital delivering her baby, that the nurse needed to check the heart rate of the baby. And she had warned the nurse several times, once I get to a certain point, I don't like to be touched or talked to, essentially. And the nurse, I guess, touched her, probably to adjust one of the leads or something. And she says, very proudly, in my opinion, and I punched her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw that.
Hard stop.
I saw that.
Hard stop. She proudly, to me it appears, very proudly, unapologetically says, and so I punched her. Instant rage.
I saw that that clip too, and herself, she telling the story seemed like it was okay, and the host of the podcast also was very encouraging of the behavior as well. From what I understand is, I think there's different stories. Did you hear like she had a birth plan, supposedly came in with a birth plan, I guess, that must have stated, like you were saying, that
Mm-hmm.
when her goal was to go natural, meaning no pain medications. But I guess in having children before, she knows that during the transition phase, which is like, 7 to 10 centimeters, when the pain is at its peak, the physical touch doesn't like it, not okay, like bad, right?
Yeah.
And this is a hard. I want to hear
So
from you first, Erica.
okay. So you know me.
I completely disagree. I'm just kidding.
You just want to say that. You might.
I
I don't know.
completely disagree. No,
The
go
fact
ahead.
that you didn't give me an opinion I was like, ooh, I wonder if because her L&D experience, maybe she has a different take on this. But okay, so I don't ever just take anything at face value. I go down the rabbit hole and I do my research. And so seeing that this was part of a clip of a podcast, I went to her page. I looked at several clips of her podcast. I went to her YouTube and I watched the entire podcast in its entirety. And it's over an hour. Like it's pretty lengthy. And so there was something shocking in the podcast that I don't think anyone has picked up on. And we will
Really?
get into that. Yeah. I
Oh.
think everyone's going to be appalled when they hear this part.
Ooh, I don't know nothing about that.
Yeah. So yeah, she said that she informed the staff, the L&D nurse, everyone that as part of her plan that she is very like calm. You can't really even tell she's in labor typically until she's up to about an 8, dilated to an 8. That people will even say like she seems fine, or is she even in labor? But that what she hits that kind of threshold for her that she does not like to be touched, or I believe she also said like talked to, like she doesn't want to interact. But her main thing was touch, and that she repeatedly warned them, and that her husband, who was there at bedside, warned them like, hey, she's approaching that point. There was also a midwife and a friend in the room that may have reiterated this.
Mm-hmm.
And her perspective is that the nurse disrespected her boundaries. Those were her words. Disrespected the boundaries and should not have touched her. And that she, in my opinion, felt entitled to then physically assault her. Because let's be clear, no matter what side you are on, that is a physical assault. That is a crime. Even if you think that she was somehow justified, that is illegal. That nurse could easily press charges. And I don't think she did, but I wish she had.
She probably had a nurse manager asking her what she could have done different.
Probably.
Yeah. Probably what happened. Poor thing.
Yeah.
Oh, God, this is such a heated topic. There's so many other things that I would like to know about the scenario, but I will say that I want to preface saying that this particular individual, which me and Erica decided not to name names. I'm sure if you really wanted to, you can figure this out on your own and do your own research. But
and our goal is not for anyone to go and attack this person. Please do not do that. You can have your opinions, but we don't condone any kind of bullying.
That's been done enough. That's been done enough from what I've seen. But this person does have a huge following on their regular page and
Pretty
their
big.
podcast page. Yeah. So they definitely have a lot of people,
and the entire podcast is focused on kind of like maternal rights. When you're in labor, that seems to be the major topic. And so it does say that in the description: fostering diverse, inclusive parenting for confident, loved children, a podcast where we delve into the triumphs and challenges of parenting and marriage. But from everything that I listened to, it seemed to be hyper focused on the birthing process for mothers. And so I am curious to you as an L&D nurse, have you come across anything similar? to this?
Um, I have actually. Now this is what I was saying is I'm very curious to see some more details about it. Now, obviously she had a midwife, and she did choose to deliver in the hospital, which in and of itself, is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, if you want to be pretty in control of where your labor plan goes, it's not to say that you can't go into the hospital. Like, you can go in with a birth plan, but usually the way that I've dealt with it is, it's read over, and then before, we discuss these points. Like, I've had patients come in before that say, no IV access no matter what. And you're like,
Right.
okay, but do you realize that in the event of an emergency C-section, like, or
Right.
your baby's
Can we
heart
just put in
tones
a
are down?
saline lock? You
Yeah,
don't
if
have
we
to be
don't at least,
attached.
like, there's a lot of discussion that should be had beforehand. And I would have, seeing that, actually first, this is what I would have done personally, is as the nurse, gone to whoever, the in charge is, the OB, or if it's the midwives, are usually they're under an OB. So there's an actual doctor over them. At least that's how it is here in Florida. But I would have been like, hey, this one here to me is like a no-go. Like, I know you don't want me to touch you, but can we at least, we need to designate some parameters. Like, is it Q 30 minutes? I can listen really quickly to the heart rate. Like, it
Mhm.
needs to be figured out what is okay and what's not okay. And that, I know that they're saying that the midwife said these were her wishes, that's what she said. But was all of this laid out on the table beforehand?
Right.
Or was it that she presented the birth plan, they knew she wanted to go natural, but nobody really had these discussions with her? And it, there's so many variables in it, because it's like, you know, I've had in the past that I've been like, hey, your so and so patient says no to monitoring, says no to an IV, and the doctor will be like, nope, that's a no go, that's a no fly. Sorry, let's go in the room and talk to them. Um, Now, had the doctor or the midwife been adamant and they all went in with a plan and said, I am assuming the responsibility. Um, if she hits, transition phase, she does not have to have heart tones checked at all. I've never heard of that happening in all my years. But I would have documented the hell out of it. Okay. And regardless, I doesn't even matter which way what went. That nurse never should have been hit. I don't care what.
Thank you.
I mean, we're not talking. The nurse did not assault the patient physically. The nurse is doing what our instincts
Oh,
tell us, and
but wait, let
it's
me tell
too.
you what is said in the podcast.
Oh
It
God, I don't
says,
know if I want to hear it.
yeah, and it is, to be fair, it's not the mom that said this, but one of the guests says, and I
Okay.
quote, the assault was the touching, not the hitting. It was self-defense.
Oh my Lord in heaven! Come on.
Yes. Yeah. Let that sink in.
Wow.
So she's
That's
flipping the
that's
script and saying the nurse assaulted her by touching. And maybe you should say, for people that don't know, like, if she's coming in to check a baby's heart rate, what kind of touching are we talking about? Probably.
I mean, it's essentially, you could technically just do it by holding, like, it's a little circular ultrasound device that, typically we leave them on continuously with straps. But I'm assuming what the nurse probably did was came in there and tried to hold it up against her belly long enough, probably to just get a couple minutes, to make sure that the heart rate was within a normal range. Um, because this is the tough part. As a nurse, God forbid that baby came out with no heart rate, um, APGARs of 0, 0,
Right.
and then her baby died. This would be a very, very, very different response from this mother. I guarantee it. I absolutely guarantee it. I do
Well,
not think that this
and
mom would have been like, those were my wishes and it's okay that she didn't check my baby's heartbeat. That's personally what I think.
right, the nurse would have been on the line, on the hook. That nurse would
Yes,
probably have been sued. I mean, let's be real. Let's be real. That is probably
yes,
what they would have done, you know?
yes, because there's protocols, there's things that
Yeah,
we do, and I mean,
it's a
ideally,
standard of care.
we like the monitors on them all the time so we can see what's going on. But at a
Yeah.
minimum, I think, unless the standards have changed, it's like Q 15 minutes in active labor that you need to assess the baby's heart rate, make sure that the baby's heart rate is okay because there's a lot going on during that phase. But
So to check the heart rate, we're not
mhm.
talking about anything invasive. We're not talking
No.
about anything painful. We are talking about a nurse probably, we weren't there, but probably holding a device or repositioning a device that is strapped on the outside of the abdomen.
Yes. Now, what I can say is a lot of mothers, when they're in that phase of labor, it is very hard to get them to hold still. It can be hard. You're trying to kind of chase them to try to get
Mhm.
the monitor to. I mean, this is complete opposite of an epidural patient that's just laying there. Like sometimes they're bent over and you're having trouble getting the monitor like in the position that you need to. And some moms are very sensitive to touch, like, but it's not invasive in any way. It's not painful in a sense of, I mean, her pain senses, I guess, could be heightened because she's in labor. But granted, she said she has a very high pain tolerance, from what I understand. And I, I don't know. I can't imagine that monitor could have been that. This is just tough. Like, I wish I had a camera in the room to
Right. Because
see.
we're only getting one side, of course.
Right. I would love to hear the nurse's point of view.
I
Like,
would love to hear from the nurse. I know that probably won't happen, HIPAA, but if you are out there, if you can get this to that nurse, I would love to speak with you, even if it's offline. Please reach out. But yeah, so
yeah,
now
or to,
knowing that, checking a heart rate,
mhm,
and
mhm.
they are calling that an assault, not her punching a violent assault, punching a nurse, but the nurse
Completely
simply
uncalled
touching
for.
the abdomen to check a heart rate is the assault, and that she was merely defending herself.
That completely uncalled for, completely not okay. It's never, I mean, it's never okay. There's never, aside from the nurse punching you first, there is no justification for that. That's not okay in any way, shape, or form. In all my years, I've been bitten before. I can tell you that. I've
Me
had a
too. Me
patient
too.
bite me from pain. I've had my arm gripped so hard because
Me too.
they're in pain. It's left bruises. Um, but I think that's the extent that I've had as an L&D nurse. Um, to me, the biting was the worst one, and usually you can get a mom under control, and you're like, no, that's not okay.
Right.
You're in control of your pain. Yeah, and normally you can hone them back in, but this woman like cold clocked her like out of freaking
Yeah.
nowhere, you
Yeah. Can
know?
you
And a
imagine?
lot of times when women are in pain, they say things they don't mean. Like, so as a nurse, her saying, no, I don't want you to touch me. Like, or you know what I'm saying? Like, as a nurse, we'd be like, okay, it's just her pain talking. I'm going to do it real quick, make sure the baby's okay. You know, now, if the midwife was in the room and the midwife saw this happening, I don't understand why the midwife didn't be like, no, like, and grab, there's
Yeah.
so many
That
different
was one of my
variables.
questions too. Yeah.
I don't get it.
If the midwife was there, why wasn't the midwife monitoring vital signs? And so many questions. So also she references that this was her rainbow baby, so there was
Now,
a
what did that
medical
mean?
history
I heard
there.
that. Okay, what?
um,
Go ahead. I
I
didn't know
thought
what
you
that
would
meant.
explain it.
Rainbow baby? I ain't never
I,
heard of no
I
rain. I
I
mean, I'm
think it
assuming what
means
I'm guessing she had IVF or some type of infertility. I don't know what that means.
No. I believe that it means you have previously lost a baby, and now this is the
Oh,
baby that you're having
I wasn't
after that.
I was not
She
aware
did.
of
She
that, but
did
okay.
lose a baby
Okay.
prior to this, had a miscarriage.
Which is awful. That's sad, very sad.
Absolutely awful. But there is a lot of discrepancies. For example, she says repeatedly that in the previous situation where she lost a baby, and I don't know how long prior to that was, she says that the nurse refused for hours to come in and take vital signs, that she kept asking her to take vital signs, and the nurse refused to come in the room to take vital signs. Now, first of all, I don't know a nurse in the world that would refuse to do vital signs if a patient is asking. Like, I'm not saying every nurse is perfect. There's some outliers out there, but I am saying that is highly unlikely. And now you're claiming the exact polar opposite and saying it's a problem. So the first nurse refused for hours to take vital signs. And that caused you so much trauma because she's really painting it like that led to her having a miscarriage. And now you're saying
She
in this
felt like
scenario,
that what I heard her say was she felt like that nurse had labeled her as drug seeking and
mhm,
was already had her stereotyped and was angry with the patient. I will say that there have been patients that I'm suspicious that they're drug seeking. It doesn't change the way you take care of them. I mean, you
right,
may possibly think that you may have your hunch. You may call the physician. You might call social services to check in on stuff. You might do a UDS, like, but it doesn't mean. I mean, I have never seen somebody completely neglect a patient and refuse to do what their
vital
oath
signs,
as a
like the
nurse
most
is.
basic thing. I can't imagine. That is such a reasonable ask from a patient. I can't imagine a nurse for hours repeatedly refusing and not take vital signs. That seems highly unlikely to me. Again, we weren't there.
This is This is so hard for me as an L&D nurse to hear this and just as a nurse in general because you start thinking, how many patients did that nurse have that day? Were they
Mhm.
short-staffed? Was she
Mhm.
stretched beyond her limit? Was this patient stable when she did check on her and then she's having to prioritize the care that she's giving and, to other patients? Was she tied up in an emergency and couldn't get in there when the patient
Mhm.
who knows? Like you were saying, there's two sides to every story. In her mind, she has some trauma from that past
Absolutely.
experience.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But
Yes.
it did not escape me that the first case where she tragically lost the baby, her whole thing is the nurse
Mhm.
refused to take vital signs for hours, which led to this horrible outcome. And now in this scenario, the nurse was trying to take vital signs. And you're saying that she
Yeah.
assaulted you. Like, really? Really? Come on. You can't have it both ways, you know? And then
Yeah,
she
her
calls it
claim
a
is that
procedure that she's refused. She told them repeatedly she didn't want any procedures when she reached 8. No procedures. She says this over and over again. Do we really think that checking a heart rate is a procedure? I mean, I guess in a roundabout way, but like when you say procedure, you're not really
I'm
thinking
thinking
vital signs.
like an IV, a Foley catheter.
Right.
Now, if they tried to go in and put like a fetal scalp electrode on the baby's
Right.
head,
Different. Different.
that would
Yeah.
be an invasive procedure that, would need to be discussed. Um, this nurse is just doing what L&D nurses are trained to do, which is to look out for mom and baby. You always think people that are L&D nurses think you have one patient. You don't have one patient, you have two. You have two
Yeah.
people when
Yeah.
they're in labor that you're
You
responsible
have an
for.
obligation to the baby.
You do. And I'm sure that this nurse probably just thought, I can do it quickly. Let's make sure the baby's safe. Never in her wildest dreams would she have thought that this mom would um would punch her. I mean,
Yeah,
it's just very dramatic. Very
it is.
dramatic.
And another component of this that I think is important to point out, because she points it out repeatedly, is, she is African American, and
Yes.
there is a disproportionately higher maternal infant mortality rate in African American people, women of color, right? We know that statistically.
Yes.
I don't want to downplay that at all. At all.
No.
I understand the fear. I appreciate that. I truly do. And I don't want to pretend like I can understand that fear firsthand, because I can't.
We don't know.
I can't. There's another thing where she keeps saying, painting the nurse as like kind of unhinged. She says that the nurse was freaking out. She says this repeatedly in the podcast. The nurse was freaking out. This is referring to the previous incident where she lost the baby. I need to clarify. She says the nurse was frantic. The nurse was freaking out. Now,
freaking out about what?
Pause right there, because I want to say nurses in general hold it together. Like, we know to have our game face on. We don't show that we're freaking out, even if we are. And for to say that an L&D nurse is freaking out about an L&D issue, I mean, that's like making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for y'all. That's what you do day in and day out. I find it hard to believe that the nurse was running around freaking out and frantic in the way that she is portraying.
Now, the way I interpreted what she was saying, I could be wrong, but I'm thinking she was more on a postpartum floor, like she had already lost the baby, because the way she refers to it is that she had retained placenta left that led to a D&C. And now we're talking of retained placenta. That means that you've already delivered and there's still some placenta left in there and your uterus can't contract down. So to me, it doesn't sound like she was not on a high acuity floor anymore. She was more on a floor where a mom could have.
She says she was on the same floor for this incident where she punched the nurse, as she was like a year prior, I believe is what she said, actually. When she came in.
But the nurse may at that point have had, some LDRs, they're LDRPs, they do their postpartum there as well. So maybe that nurse had multiple patients. Like a lot of times they'll assign one nurse to do postpartums on the floor if you are an LDRP. So maybe she had multiple patients, and who knows? I mean, that's what I was saying. There's so many factors that aren't answered that it's hard to know the specifics of that. You know what I mean? But it wouldn't be untypical, I guess is what I'm trying to say, is for somebody on a postpartum floor to not have vitals going off every 30 minutes. It might be Q shift. It depends where they're at post-delivery, what the Q4 hours.
I don't think that she delivered. So I believe she was sent there by her physician. I don't know how far along she was in the pregnancy. And she says that she had a dream. She fell asleep at some point and had a dream that she was bleeding a lot, and that in the dream she calls the nurse, and then she wakes up from the dream and is kind of panicked, like how you do sometimes when you have a scary dream. And she pulls the covers back because she thinks maybe she's actually bleeding, but she wasn't. I don't think so at that point. And she calls for the nurse, says, "I need you to come in here immediately." And the nurse does respond and gets her up, stands her up, and that immediately there's a ton of blood and fluid at that point. And that's when she says that the nurse starts freaking out. And again, this is with the first child that she lost, that the nurse starts freaking out, that she's running around crazy, that she's here, get this, that she's on the phone with the doctor, adamantly saying she's gone through X amount of pads. She needs to go to the OR. What do we call that? We call that advocating for our patient.
Yeah, you're basically saying this woman is hemorrhaging. This is not a normal. And sometimes you have to call the doctor in the room because you can't leave them. I mean, what, you're going to just let them hemorrhage alone? Like, So I've had to make a phone call in the room before. I've had to call out and say, get Dr. So and so on the phone and transfer it in here. Like,
Yeah.
so, and maybe she was a newer nurse. Maybe she was a tiny bit frazzled. Maybe she wasn't
Possible.
anticipating. Yeah. I mean,
It's
nobody
possible.
likes to see a patient that's in labor or whatnot bleeding. And you're thinking, it's
Yeah.
just the whole thing doesn't make that the story doesn't
It
make
doesn't.
sense.
It's
Like,
like there's absolutely pieces missing. It seems so clear that I think as a nurse, we're like, if we had that piece, it would really paint the whole picture, you know?
right.
But the
And
way
I'm like,
she's
how many
painting
weeks?
it.
My brain is like, how many weeks was she? Were they trying to
Yeah.
keep the pregnancy in? Was she on mag
Yeah.
sulfate? Did they put her on things to
Right.
relax her uterus so that she didn't contract? Like, where are we in the sequence of pregnancy?
Right.
Was she 9 weeks where it was an inevitable spontaneous abortion that was going to happen just because
Mhm.
the baby had passed and she was already bleeding? Like, who knows? Who knows? I just don't want either way. I don't want it to look like if the nurse didn't do vitals and she was supposed to, that's wrong. Okay. Who knows?
Mhm.
But if the nurse had certain set parameters and it was that she was tied up in another room and, you know, I mean, I don't know. I can't imagine a nurse wouldn't come in regardless of if a patient called out and
Yeah, she
said,
said she refused to come in, refused to give pain
yes.
medicine, that at some
And
point
if
they thought
it
maybe
did
she had
happen,
kidney stones and she was in
if
pain, they
that did
thought.
happen, that is horrible. That is
Yeah.
horrible. Shame on that nurse. Shame on that nurse for if that's really what went down, that's wrong. It's completely wrong. And I could see why she'd be jaded. I could see
Yeah.
that. I could
Yeah.
understand that. I mean, I could completely get it. I
I
would
can
feel
too.
that way too.
Like you would have some trauma coming in to a
Hmm.
subsequent birth. And she's had, I want to say 4. I heard her say on one of the podcasts, maybe 4 children, 3 or 4. So she's been through this a time or two, you know. And I don't know where she was at with the most recent one, in that order. But I just thought that was interesting. So you're faulting the nurse literally for advocating. You're criticizing her for advocating, for getting on the phone with the doctor saying, you need to get her to an OR right now. She's gone through this many pads. I don't know how long she's been bleeding. She needs to get to the OR, right? But you're painting the nurse in a bad light because of that.
Right.
And the entire kind of vibe of the entire podcast, and she had 2 guests on, was very much anti-nurse, nurse bashing. None of these were medical professionals. The
Right.
one of the guests actually almost upset me more than the
Okay.
mom
Before you
saying
get
that she
into that,
punched.
I'm stopping you. We're doing the problem of the
Okay.
week. Problem of the week. We've got more to share about this story, but
Yeah.
this is kind of crazy because the problem of the week, Erica, that I got is about healthcare violence. And it was sent to our
Okay.
Nurses Uncorked. Yeah, our Nurses
Okay.
Uncorked email in case you guys want to send in something. It's Nurses Uncorked at nursesuncorked.com. I'll read the whole thing because it's cute. Hello, I hope I'm sending this to the right place. I know that you take questions from your listeners and sometimes answer them on Nurses Uncorked podcast. So I'm hoping to submit my question for that purpose. I have a question about workplace violence. My best friend, who is also a nurse, just got assaulted on the job yesterday. She was punched very hard in the chest repeatedly and bit by the patient she was caring for. When she reported it to her manager, his response was jokingly, "Did you tell them that you bite back?" Such pig-headed
Oh God.
freaking response. He did nothing about it at all. Didn't even file an incident report. I found this extremely offensive. I'm really angry about it. She works at one of our nation's most prestigious hospitals, and this was the response she got. My friend does not want to press charges because she doesn't want to
Mm.
deal with the drama. My question is, would filing a workman's comp case be beneficial at all? How can we do our part to make hospital organizations understand that this is in no way acceptable, that this type of toxic culture of thinking that nurses get assaulted on the job is normal and it needs to end? I would just like to hear your thoughts about whether workman's comp claims being filed would make the hospital take notice.
Yeah. Well, first of all, the manager saying that
story.
is so misogynistic.
That's disgusting.
That in itself could be reported, especially knowing that it was a male manager.
Did you
really?
tell him that you bite?
Really?
I mean, yeah, like
that's almost worse than the what could you have done to prevent this? What could you have done differently? You know? Yeah. So here's
as if
kind
she
of
was going to laugh at that. As if she was going to be like, oh.
And imagine had a nurse actually said that, like, they'd be reprimanded for saying that. That would be construed as a threat to the patient. You know that would have happened. But yeah, so here's the thing. Yes, go through workman's comp. Yeah, absolutely. They're probably going to deny it. They deny like 90% of the claims up front because they count on no one appealing it. Appeal it, keep appealing it, just automatic response. What's the appeal process? How do I appeal this? You just keep appealing it until they finally approve it. It also creates a paper trail in case anything comes of it, in case there's retaliation, in case it goes to any kind of, lawsuit, anything like that. But the bigger problem is, why is the nurse not reporting it? Like, I'm sorry, we got to get past this. Like, for the love of God, it's 2024. You cannot sit back and complain when you are too chicken shit, excuse my language, but you are, to do the right thing and report it. Like, you hold the cards to an extent in this. Could it come with retaliation? Yes, but that is illegal and you can fight that separately. You have to report it.
I think too, like a brand new nurse, who knows how long she's been a nurse, a brand new nurse might be a little more apprehensive. A nurse that's been there, I would think, a while, especially, in the year, 2024, like we've talked about this enough, people. Like, come on. Nobody's going to stand up for you other than yourself.
Stop complaining if you're not going to be part of the solution. You're part of the problem if you're not going to be part of the solution.
Finds a way. They find a way to make it seem like this is going to be so tedious on you to do this.
They gaslight
You're going to have to. Oh yeah, they make it sound like they're telling you not to do it for your benefit. So who knows how they spun it to her?
I'm sure.
We just need to. Yeah, let's just.
We don't do that here. We don't, and the DA won't file charges anyway, so it's pointless. You can't do that. We don't do none of that's true. It is your right as a citizen to file that police report. That is assault, because a crime is a crime is a crime. Assault is assault is assault, regardless of whether it was a patient doing it or not. Now, whether or not the DA decides to move forward and press charges and prosecute, that's beyond your control. You can't control that. All you can control is doing your part, doing the right thing, and reporting it, because nothing is going to change until everyone starts reporting these things. That means a workplace violence report, an incident report, creating your paper trail, going through workman's comp, filing a police report. Is it tedious? Yes. Is it a pain in the butt?
I think the police report would have made the hospital take more notice than filing a workman's comp claim. Do you agree with that? I mean, I think in reality, if she did all of it, the more that you can do to make the hospital, I think, and administration uncomfortable, because they don't want to be uncomfortable. They don't want to be seen as that something went wrong in their facility. I think that the more that you advocate for yourself and do the things that you should is what will really, because I think that's her bottom line question was, would filing the claim make the hospital take more notice? I think more things need to happen.
Yeah.
It's better than nothing.
It would protect them, because you're saying,
yeah.
And also, we never know what the ramifications of the injuries are. Like, you might feel like, oh, it's nothing, and maybe I'm sore for a day or two, and then it's a week later that you find out, oh, it's more severe than you thought. Like, you need to protect yourself. You need to make sure that it is documented. This was a workplace injury. You didn't cause this. This was a workplace injury.
If you get hit, slap, bit, whatever, it's not okay. And you have every right to press charges and do what you need to do. So I would say first and foremost, think of that.
Yeah.
All right, back to punching a nurse.
Yeah, back to punching a nurse. So the other two guests on the podcast, like I said, it seemed to be very anti-nurse. It was very much a nurse bashing vibe. They all kind of had their stories. But one of the guests in particular said some very inflammatory things, in my opinion. She said, first of all, where are the nurses' bedside manner? And she said to the mom, I wouldn't even feel bad, as in the nurse had it coming. And then went on to say,
Wow.
there's always signs that a baby is in distress, that nothing ever happens suddenly or without warning, that babies have a 10-minute reserve. And so there was essentially indicating that there was no reason for the nurse to even check the vital signs, because there would be other clinical signs that something was wrong. And mind you, none of them are medical professionals.
I was going to say, when did she get her
right?
Her
I think she's maybe a doula now or something, after she had been through some traumatic birth. But that's it. And then says,
okay.
you wouldn't touch me like that if you met me on the street. So why would you touch me like that? Because it's completely different, because that's our job. You're not going to walk up to a perfect stranger and start touching their abdomen like apples and oranges. Come on.
Yeah, that's not a good comparison.
I mean, not at all.
And I would say, if this was in her birth plan and the nurse went in there and started doing the heart tones, she might be agitated and annoyed. But I think at the very most, she might be like, oh, come on. I said this, or
I told you not to, or something.
Yeah, but to just, or get somebody else in here. There's so many other things she could have done.
Right. She claims not to remember doing it, which seems awfully convenient to me. That her husband and friend told her afterwards, oh no, you hit her hard. You really knocked her. She claims to conveniently not remember it. And she says, I wish I didn't do it. I felt bad afterwards. None of which is really an apology.
She says, in hindsight, she wishes she hadn't hit her, but then she defends hitting her.
Yeah. So and we'll get to the apology air quotes video. But so now you've got a husband there that is warning supposedly the medical staff that, she's getting to that point where she doesn't want to be touched or have any procedures done. And is standing there as his wife hauls off and punches a nurse. Okay. What would you say if I told you the husband is a nurse?
No.
Yes.
Wow. Whoa.
Right?
Holy shit balls.
A med-surg cardiac nurse.
The only thing that I can think with this being a nurse is that he knows his wife and he knew she was capable of doing that. He knew, and he was... I'm trying to give the man the benefit of the doubt as a nurse, and unfortunately, or fortunately, however he wants to look at it, he's married to this woman, and he knows what she's capable of. And maybe he was like, hey, he was trying to prevent a catastrophe. Maybe she had said, if anybody touches me, who knows? But regardless, I mean, I would think he would understand the importance of trying to keep up with, making sure the baby's okay. But
you can't tell me as a med-surg nurse, right? That's a plot twist that I don't think anybody else has picked up on, but it's in the podcast. If you go and listen to it, you can't tell me as a med-surg nurse that you have not been witness to and or been the victim of workplace violence from patients. Now, I understand, first and foremost, your loyalty and obligation is to your family, as it should be. But what in the hell? You are a nurse, and your wife just hauled off and punched a nurse. And who knows what their conversations were behind the scenes, but she doesn't indicate that there's any kind of problem. She just keeps saying, my husband as a nurse says this and this and this. You just sold out your profession, in my opinion. What the hell? How dare you tolerate that? You know how wrong that is.
Erica, are you sure they said this on the podcast?
Yeah, she says it repeatedly. I had to go back and listen to it. She says it
My
once towards the
husband is a
beginning.
nurse. My
Yeah, she
husband is
says
a
something like,
nurse.
because my husband's a nurse, I know ... And I'm like, wait a minute, what? And then later in the podcast, she says, yeah, my husband is a nurse, although not L&D, he's med surg and cardiac.
Wow.
I was like, you have got to be kidding me.
I mean, hopefully, like, I'm thinking this man knew, unfortunately, his wife has a temper, and he knew that if, especially because of how upset she was about her last miscarriage, which is traumatizing in and of itself, and then that combined with her perception or reality, I don't know. I mean, we weren't there, of how she was taken care of. She probably has, I'm sure, confided in her husband and voiced to him her distrust and anger towards nurses, because and if that's the way it went down, rightfully so. But again, I don't care. Regardless, nobody should be hit.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But
the whole vibe of the podcast was that they were all so jaded. And I don't want to discount anyone's prior trauma. I'm not saying they didn't have prior trauma. And I'm not saying that that's not going to influence future, healthcare interactions with medical professionals. Of course it is. But I submit that if you are that jaded, that if you are going into the hospital expecting these things to happen, that in some way, shape, or form, don't you think that you're almost like manifesting it? If you are constantly looking to find something wrong, you're going to find something wrong.
Yeah, I mean, nurses and patients we touch. We're all up in each other's business.
It's part of the job.
Yeah,
it's literally part of our assessment. We have to do it.
Especially labor and delivery. I mean, we're all up in your junk.
Yeah.
It's not like, I mean, you want to talk about personal zones? So did she say no to a vaginal exam when they were worried the baby might be crowning? Did she say, I'm gonna punch you or get off me? You can't check my vagina? Like, why was the heart tones a bad idea? But do you see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. I mean, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure, I think. Like, a birth plan is great, and empower yourself. I think every patient should be empowered. Every mom to be should be empowered. Have your birth plan.
Everybody needs to be open, the nurse and the patient.
It's not always going to go that way. It's not.
Both
and when you are
so
obsessed with sticking to it, it's like you're almost manifesting that something is going to not go the way that you plan. And then, you're causing yourself unneeded anxiety, or maybe you feel like a failure after you deliver if you end up getting the epidural or whatever. Like, if you want to raw dog it, if you don't want to get the epidural, if you want to stand up to give birth, like, God love you. Do whatever the hell you want. But understand that your birth plan can only go so far. And when something is going wrong, you came to the hospital for the medical professionals, right? So let us do our job. You could have delivered at home. You could have, right?
Well, I'm saying there's got to be a reason. Either the midwife doesn't feel comfortable with her history doing a home birth, maybe because she did have a postpartum hemorrhage before. There was a reason that, whatever the account may be, whether the patient deep down inside, because she lost so much blood and needed a transfusion, knows I need to be in proximity to an operating room, or the midwife was like, I think we'd be better suited. Who knows? But it's very hard to have it all like, oh God, this is such a hard topic. It's just so freaking hard. All of this stuff should have been ironed out in better detail. That's all I have to say.
Well, and after she posted that, it's gone viral, and people feel very strongly about it one way or another. And so she put out an apology video recently, a quote apology video. But let's talk about that, because there is no actual apology in the apology. video. She says,
Right.
I wish I hadn't hit the nurse. Not, I'm sorry that I hit the nurse. I wish I hadn't hit that nurse, because now you're being raked over the coals, because now people are criticizing you. That's why you wish you hadn't hit the nurse. Let's be real. Not because you actually feel remorse, because it's pretty clear in your telling of the story repeatedly that you felt entitled to hit the nurse. You
And she
felt
still does. She
entitled,
does.
and you still
She
do.
still
You make
does.
excuse
Yes.
after excuse after excuse and take no accountability for it. And that's apparent throughout the entire quote apology video. And then she tries to gaslight everyone and starts like throwing statistics in there about, maternal mortality rates. And again, I'm not saying any of that's not true. It is, and it's legitimate. That's real.
Her
But
her fears were real. Her fears are
right.
real and
Yeah.
validated. And they're absolutely do African
And
American
everyone
women
should
have more
feel safe.
complications.
And I want everyone to
Right.
feel safe. And if we as nurses can do anything to make you feel safe, we should. And I hope we do. But that's not an apology. You can't, it's a whataboutism. You're supposed to be apologizing. And instead you're like, I wish I hadn't have done it over here in your left hand. A half-assed, not real apology. But let me distract you with these statistics. Let me distract you over here in my right hand with this gaslighting. Let me distract you with these fake tears over here, and then make yourself the victim. She's absolutely portraying herself as the victim, saying, and she says, the bullying in my comment section is why I don't trust nurses. Excuse me? The bullying in your comment section post dates this incident. So you can't say that's why you don't trust nurses.
But you know what? Does that mean then that nurses can distrust patients because we get hit? No, we can't. We still have to be there and love and support and take care of our patients. We can't assume every patient's going to hit us, can we? I mean,
yeah.
I mean, you can't walk into a room and immediately say that. Then that would be a preconceived notion that
exactly
you're stereotyping. Like,
yep.
you're
Like, did your
stereotyping
mom
that
never
all
teach
healthcare
you
workers
to assume good intent until you know otherwise? Because that's an important lesson in life. Assume good intent until you have reason to believe otherwise. Well, she clearly didn't do that. Clearly.
in giving her the benefit of the doubt. Like I said, if this discussion was had beforehand and the nurse was well aware, the midwife was okay with it, everybody discussed it, they all said, don't do heart tones during the final phase. I don't care what happens. And the midwife, if the nurse still wasn't okay with it and felt uncomfortable, she needed to go up her chain of command. She needed to go to the charge nurse. She needed to go to the OB that's in charge of the midwife. There's so many factors that should have happened if the nurse didn't feel comfortable. Having that all said, if the nurse knew the plan, still went in there and did the heart tones anyways, she still didn't deserve to get punched.
Correct.
She
Because
might have
that is
made
still
a
assault.
mistake. She might have, I went against the birth plan. We knew it. We were all on the same page. I was scared that maybe something was wrong with the baby. It still was fucking wrong. You don't
It's still a
clock
crime.
somebody.
Yeah.
It is not okay.
It's not okay.
I'm not saying, I don't know the circumstances of how detailed things were. Maybe the nurse did go against the plan that they all had set out and discussed. Okay, she could have gotten reprimanded in a different way, not with, I mean, that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
That's the fucking bottom line.
And then she has the audacity to say that later on after this, apparently when she remembers, because, she conveniently doesn't remember doing this assault, she says in a very critical way, and the nurse was really angry with me. Well, no shit. Of course she was. You fucking punched her.
Well,
Like, what do
I'd have
you
been a little bit
expect?
upset too. I'd have been a little bit
Wouldn't you
upset.
not have
I
been
didn't
mad
like
at
it when the
her if
patient
it was
bit me.
reversed?
When the patient bit me, I was like, no, ma'am. I'm like, no. You get it together. Of course you're going to be upset. Now,
Yeah.
even biting in comparison to a whack
Right.
in the face, that shit hurts, man. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And that nurse didn't press charges.
I don't think so.
The patient would not have been laughing about it on a podcast if there was.
Right. And I think she actually did say, I'm glad that she didn't press charges at some point. And here's the thing.
She is.
Oh, I'm sure she is. I don't condone any bullying, people going into. I left comments on her video. I wasn't bullying her. I just said kind of what I'm saying here. I feel bad for anyone that is the victim of like the cancel culture, social media attack, because I have been in that place. You've been in that place.
No.
And it's
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have.
Right?
Yeah,
one day we keep saying we'll tell that story one day. One day we will.
And
I've been in that position a couple times
to make an apology when people are angry at you. I will say, no matter how you try to do an apology,
people are going to criticize it.
Yeah. Unless it's perfect, people are going to criticize.
True.
Because
that's true.
No matter how you phrase it,
someone's going to find fault.
It usually doesn't come across 100% to everybody as
right.
Right. I mean, do I think she phrased it the best way? No,
not at all. She had an opportunity to do some kind of damage control, recovery by simply saying, I'm really sorry. I apologize to that nurse. Like, that's the basic, instead of the whole, I'm sorry you felt that way, which is kind of like what she did, not a real apology, just a, instigating thing. She said, I wish I hadn't come across. Have done it.
It would have come across a lot better. Like, I lost control.
Right.
I lost control.
Right.
I
instead of victim blaming and making the nurse.
But obviously, my pain or my mental pain, okay? Because it could be more mental pain that caused her, her fear of what happened before or whatever. But regardless, had she said, I lost it and that's not okay. But it's not okay.
Right.
I'm frustrated that she didn't stick to the plan, but I'm sorry that I did, but it was more like, I wish I hadn't, but this is why I did.
Right.
That's how it.
Right. She doubled down. She's not sorry. She clearly still felt entitled and like she did what she did because of the nurse, that it was the nurse's fault and she didn't do anything wrong. That, in my opinion, is how it comes across. And so I did momentarily feel bad for her because I have been in that position and I know how bad that feels and how hard that is when it feels like the entire world is attacking you and trying to cancel you. It's absolutely awful. Like, I don't wish that on my worst enemy. It's terrible. And then I kind of took a step back and I'm like, you know what though? Here's the major difference. When it was me, and it's happened to me twice, I didn't commit any crimes. I didn't assault anyone. I didn't hurt. You know what I mean? Like, there's a major difference here. Yeah. So I felt very strongly about that video. I want to invite the nurse. If you're out there, please reach out to Jessica or I. And if you feel comfortable, you don't have to,
of course, anonymously
go public.
Yeah. I mean,
I would love to hear from you. If anyone there has any, information, obviously bearing in mind HIPAA, I would love to know more because obviously we only have one side of the story. But I thought this was an important one to talk about because it really is a prime example of how the public perceives nurses, of the vilifying of nurses, and how they feel entitled, and that we should just brush it off like it's just part of the job. And it's not. This is what I said in her comment section. You are quite literally the reason that nurses are fleeing the profession. You and people like you are the reason that nurses are no longer at the bedside because of shit like this.
Well, and that's why I said the whole thing with who knows if that first nurse was so overwhelmed with the amount of patients that she had that day, that in the nurse's mind, and in the patient's mind, and a lot of patients see it that way. They didn't bring me my apple juice. I called out for ice chip, and in their mind, it's that we're sitting trading recipes at the nurse's station.
Oh, you know what? I'm glad you said that, because on the podcast, they were criticizing nurses because they heard them talking about where they were going to get lunch from.
Well, that's okay.
And because we are actually human beings. Nurses are people too. This is our job. People at jobs talk about what they're going to order for lunch. That doesn't mean we're doing anything wrong. Stop putting nurses in an impossible position that we can never live up to. We are people, and it may come as a shock to you, but we eat lunch when we're lucky.
We'd like to. We'd like to, but damn.
Once in a rare while.
Yeah, and I'm sure all of those nurses that were talking about lunch were sitting there charting their asses off, because that's...
Yeah.
Anywho, this is a very interesting one. Are we ready for the enema?
I think so. I'm heated now. Woo! I'm like all worked up again.
Are you ready to hear? Okay, so our enema of the week has new music. Do you want to hear?
Oh, it does? You didn't tell me that.
Yeah, I know I do.
Okay,
You ready?
I'm excited. Let's hear it. Is it saying F you?
Fuck you. Yeah. Yeah. It's... And I have to give props. You're going to add that in? RonFeingold.com is where you can find this. It's a comedian that I saw, and he has a fuck you button. And so now, anytime my husband annoys me, I have this and I go like that. But
that's great.
I've decided this is our new Enema song.
I love it.
So we have the Redonda song for Problem of the Week. And yeah. All right, so you're doing the enema, right?
I am. And so you actually called it. I'm giving the enema.
Yeah. Yeah, I called it on two different... I don't know if you saw.
Did.
I commented on two different
I posted a video recently, and you're like, I know this is going to be the Enema of the Week award. you weren't wrong. So recently, Lancaster, I don't know if I'm saying that right. Someone told me I was mispronouncing it, but Lancaster General Health in Pennsylvania sent these postcard flyers to all of their employees' homes. Like, imagine this, paying for the postage for how many thousands of these, okay? And it says on there that you should really consider making the hospital the beneficiary on your retirement account.
So stupid. You're so stupid. What? Whose idea was this?
Oh, inevitably it was management's. You know, they had meetings about this, and someone was like, that's it. That's a great idea. That, you know, they did.
Yeah. Somebody's like, Harry, you nailed it, Harry. Good job. I couldn't have thought it better. Last year we did donations for people to donate, but this year we'll talk about when they croak. When they croak,
they should designate us as beneficiary, or at least make us a partial beneficiary or a backup, secondary beneficiary, it says. Now, they certainly aren't alone. There's plenty of other hospitals and healthcare organizations that do similar things, that are constantly trying to get nurses and healthcare employees to donate to stupid things like, you too can sponsor a stone in the healing garden. You too can contribute to our new tower. You know, the new 300-bed tower that we don't have the nurses to staff, that one? Yeah, they do this shit all the time. But like, I am appalled that no one ever sits back in these meetings, because I've been in these meetings. I've witnessed this ridiculousness. No one ever sits back and goes, is that the look we want? Do we really want to be asking our employees, whom we pay, to donate to us?
Yeah, I don't think with the way we are in nursing right now.
Yeah.
Let's say that administration was wonderful and magnificent, and they had our backs, and they were doing everything. Okay, maybe. But I don't think in 2024 you want to ask us to be sign you up as a beneficiary.
No.
I just
no.
I just
No.
don't think
So
that's
this
a good
week's
idea.
Enema of the Week award goes to you, Lancaster General Health in Pennsylvania.
I love this button. Hopefully Ron Feingold. I'll put his link in the video because I don't want to take credit for it. I had to buy it when I was at the comedy show. I'm like, this is hysterical. Yeah, I'm like, he's freaking great. I don't know how he made it, but I'm this is genius. Can you imagine if all of us brought this around with us at work?
We just hid it in our pocket, and whenever management or someone did something like, ridiculous,
where did that come from?
We just hit the button.
Yeah.
Where did that come? Yeah.
Well, damn, this turned out to be a long podcast, Erica.
I know. I didn't think it was going to be that long. That's what happens when I'm heated about something.
I guess we can talk. Yeah. All right. Well, until next time on the next Nurses Uncorked, follow us and do all those good things. We don't want to have to say it again until next time.
Please.